guys, in this month's top 5, I'm going to be sharing with you some memorable food moments. We all love to eat, right? Let's be real, we all love to eat. And to make matters worse, sometimes when you're reading a book, there may be a nice descriptive scene of some food, and it's either going to turn you on or it's going to turn you off. You might be nauseated by it, you might get hungry by it. So yeah, that's what this top 5 is. It's just memorable food moments, anything related to something that you can consume, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's get going. I think I chose 5 really good ones here. At number 5, I have a very memorable scene from Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And yeah, not a very pleasant scene, perhaps a very nauseating moment when it comes to a particular food item, that being a wedding cake. And what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to read off the descriptions for these scenes. So the main character, Pip, when he's invited to Miss Havisham's house and he goes into her dining room, this is what he is greeted with on the table. So just talking about the nature of the room in general and the table, I suppose, Pip starts off by saying, "It was spacious, and I dare say had once been handsome, but every discernible thing in it was covered with dust and mold, and dropping to pieces. The most prominent object was a long table with a tablecloth spread on it, as if a feast had been in preparation, when the house and the clocks all stopped together. A centerpiece of some kind was in the middle of this cloth. It was so heavily overhung with cobwebs that its form was quite indistinguishable. And as I looked along the yellow expanse, out of which I remember its seeming to grow like a black fungus, I saw speckled-legged spiders with blotchy bodies running home to it, and running out from it, as if some circumstance of the greatest public importance had just transpired in the spider community." I love that description, you guys, of the spiders. "I heard the mice, too, rattling behind the panels, as if the same occurrence were important to their interest. But the black beetles took no notice of the agitation, and groped about the hearth in a ponderous elderly way, as if they were short-sighted and hard of hearing, and not on terms with one another." So then the scene kind of continues as Pip looks at the table, and then Miss Havisham, she says to him, "What do you think that is?" And she's pointing at the centerpiece of the table. So then Pip says to her, "I can't guess what it is, ma'am." And she responds, "It's a great cake, a bride cake." So yeah, that's when Pip realizes that the centerpiece of the table, the thing that he initially thought looked like a big thing of spider webs and cobwebs and whatnot, he comes to realize that it's a gigantic wedding cake, and it's so gross, you guys. So gross, but so descriptive. It's like only Charles Dickens could come up with something gruesome like that. At number 4, I have Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. And Alice in Wonderland, there's many occurrences of Alice eating something, and more specifically, she eats things that she shouldn't be eating, because whenever she does eat or drink something, it always gets her into trouble, as we know. So yeah, one of the first memorable moments is definitely the moment when she first kind of enters Wonderland and she discovers the Eat Me cookies. So just to read a bit of that. "Soon her eye fell on a little glass box that was lying under the table. She opened it and found it in a very small cake, on which the words 'Eat Me' were beautifully marked in crayons. 'Well, I'll eat it,' said Alice. 'And if it makes me grow larger, I can reach the key. And if it makes me grow smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden, and I don't care which happens.' She ate a little bit and said anxiously to herself, 'Which way, which way?' holding her hand on the top of her head to feel which way it was growing, and she was quite surprised to find that she remained the same size. To be sure, that is what generally happens when one eats cake, But Alice had got so much into the way of expecting nothing but out-of-the-way things to happen that it seemed quite dull and stupid for life to go on in the common way. So she set to work and very soon finished off the cake. And then, yeah, if you know what happens next, that's when she starts growing. So yeah, I love that. Just Lewis Carroll, very much like Charles Dickens, you know, just his descriptions. And Alice's just, her behavior, you know, Alice just not giving a damn what's going on, what's going to happen to her. At number 3, I have The Bronze Horseman by Paulina Simons, with a scene that is quite sexy, you guys, involving some creme brulee ice cream. Whew, this has just always been one of my favorite moments in this whole book. Seriously, very sexy. So the main character, Tatiana, she has just purchased herself a creme brulee ice cream. And this novel, it opens and World War II is just about to begin, and she's just out on the streets of Leningrad where she lives, and she just goes out to get herself an ice cream. And yes, some things happen while she's out eating her ice cream, so let's read. It was a perfect day. For 5 minutes there was no war, and it was just a glorious Sunday in a Leningrad June. When Tatiana looked up from her ice cream, she saw a soldier staring at her from across the street. So what happens next? Tatiana, she just kind of continues to eat her ice cream. She's kind of looking up and down the street like, why is that guy looking at me? Why is he staring at me? She kind of stops eating her ice cream as she thinks about it. And then the next thing that happens, a bus is arriving because she's also waiting for a bus to pick her up. And so yeah, the two of them, Tatiana and this mysterious soldier, they both get up at about the same time to merge over to the bus. So the bus doors opened again. "Need the bus?" asked the driver. The soldier looked at Tatiana, then at the bus driver. "Oh, for the sake of Lenin and Stalin," the driver bellowed, slamming the door shut for the second time. Tatiana was left standing in front of the bench. She backed away, tripped, and sat down. In a casual tone, with a shrug and a roll of his eyes, the soldier said, "I thought it was my bus." "Yeah, me too," she uttered, her voice croaky. "Your ice cream is melting," he said helpfully. And it was melting right through the bottom point of the waffle cone onto her dress. "Oh no," she said. Tatiana brushed the ice cream only to spread it into a smear. "Great," she muttered, and noticed that her hand wiping the dress was trembling. So yeah, the scene goes on for a lengthy amount of time, and the ice cream is constantly mentioned and brought up, and there's something really sexy about it. I don't know if it's just me, but I've always loved this moment involving the ice cream between Tatiana and yeah, her first introduction to Alexander. At number 2, I have The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, and you guys probably already know what I'm going to pick out, and it's the infamous Turkish delight scene. This has definitely always been a favorite scene of mine because this book, it takes place in winter, and yeah, when it's winter here, you know, in the real world, it's like I always kind of think about this particular moment, and I'm like, man, I want some hot chocolate, I want some Turkish delight, because it's just so appetizing. So yeah, the character Edmund, he has just entered Narnia. He encounters the White Witch. That's her name, right? The White Witch? Jadis? Something like that. And yeah, he's freezing, he's cold, he's miserable, he can't find his sister. The Queen took from somewhere among her wrappings a very small bottle, which looked as if it were made of copper. Then, holding out her arm, she let one drop fall from it on the snow beside the sledge. Edmund saw the drop for a second in midair, shining like a diamond, but the moment it touched the snow, there was a hissing sound, and there stood a jeweled cup full of something that steamed. The dwarf immediately took this and handed it to Edmund, with a bow and a smile. Not a very nice smile. Edmund felt much better as he began to sip the hot drink. It was something he had never tasted before, very sweet and foamy and creamy, and it warmed him right down to his toes. So then the Queen asks him, "What would you like to eat?" And then he responds, "Turkish delight, please, your majesty." The Queen let another drop fall from her bottle onto the snow, and instantly there appeared a round box tied with green silk ribbon, which when opened turned out to contain several pounds of the best Turkish delight. Each piece was sweet and light to the very center, and Edmund had never tasted anything more delicious. He was quite warm now, and very comfortable. And yeah, seriously, say this scene, my mouth always waters, and it's like, oh, I want the hot chocolate, I want the Turkish delight. That sounds so great. And last, of course, I had to put something from Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling on this list, because these characters, there's constantly something with food. You know, whenever they go to the Great Hall, just the meals that they have, just the tables laid out with all of the food, I always get super hungry. Plus, just the sheer amount of candy that these characters eat is a little ridiculous. And yeah, the butterbeer. I mean, seriously, so many memorable moments of just food or drinking, just anything. So the scene that I have decided to pick here is when Harry is on the Hogwarts Express for the first time, and here comes the trolley lady with all of the candy, and it's just this really beautiful, magical moment. Around 12:30, there was a great clattering outside the corridor, and a smiling, dimpled woman slid back their door and said, "Anything off the cart, dears?" Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears went pink again, and he muttered that he'd brought sandwiches. Harry went out into the corridor. He had never had money for candy with the Dursleys, and now that he had pockets rattling with gold and silver, he was ready to buy as many Mars bars as he could carry. But the woman didn't have Mars bars. What she did have were Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, Drooble's best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, cauldron cakes, licorice wands, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got some of everything, and he paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze nuts. So yeah, just one of those moments, you know, one of those moments, just your first experience with the magical world in some ways, and Harry having all this money, and it's like, I'm going to use my money on a bunch of candy. I love it. So you guys, that's it for my top 5 this month with memorable food moments. So you guys, what have I left out? What other memorable food moments can you think of? Whether that's something nauseating, like the cake from Great Expectations, or something really yummy, like the Turkish delight from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Just share any of your favorites down in the comments below. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.